Hey, we're going to be talking about angles of rotation and coterminal angles. I love trigonometry. I think it's really fun, so hopefully you will develop an appreciation for it like I have. So first off, you need to review the quadrants. Okay, so we're used to things going in a clockwise order because that's how the hands of a clock work. Okay, here's 12, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and whatever. So the hands on the clock move this way, and that's called clockwise. But in trigonometry, we think of things going counterclockwise. That's supposed to be okay. All right, so you number the quadrants starting here, and you go in a counterclockwise order, movement, whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, let's move on. It's kind of hard to see this here. Hi everyone, we're going to talk about angles of rotation. It's a very important fundamental concept when we are talking about trigonometry and coterminal angles. Super fun stuff. All right, so first let's review the quadrants. Okay, in trigonometry we like to proceed in a counterclockwise order. So, imagine you have the hands on a clock. The hands on the clock move in this direction, and that's called clockwise. Okay, so when we think in trigonometry, we go counterclockwise, which means we go in the opposite rotational direction. And we number the quadrants, we go 1, 2, 3, 4 in that order. And it's really important that you know which quadrant you're in for other stuff that we're going to do later. All right, now there is a correct way to draw an angle and a wrong way. When you hear of an angle being drawn in standard position, the initial side, which is considered the starting side, because initial means the start, is always on the positive side of the x-axis. So this is the positive side of the x-axis. All right. And the rotation is formed by two rays with a common endpoint called the vertex. So one ray is on the initial side, right here, and then the other ray is called the terminal side, and it's called the terminal side because that's where the angle terminates. All right, and we always rotate this way. Okay, so we're not going to talk about now the measure of the angle is the amount and direction of the rotation from the initial side to the terminal side. So how much we rotate. Okay, and you want to show the direction of that rotation by putting an arrow there. Okay, now let's talk about positive versus negative angles, because we can have positive rotations and negative rotations. So if we're going counterclockwise, what it says here is for positive angles. Okay, and if I'm rotating clockwise, then that's a negative rotation. Okay, so just to show you what that looks like, this is a positive counterclockwise angle, counterclockwise rotation. And this is what a negative clockwise angle would look like. And one way I like to think about it is when you think about positive, okay, we're swinging above the x-axis for counterclockwise positive angle. And then down here is where the negatives are. We're swinging below the x-axis. And so that's a negative angle. Now let's talk about the quadrantal angles. Now these are angles that terminate on either the x or the y-axis. So if I do a quarter rotation, that's 90 degrees. And if I do a 180-degree rotation, I terminate here on the negative side of the x-axis. If I do a 270-degree rotation, and it's kind of hard to see, I'll just try to draw it in here. Here's my initial side. Here's my terminal side. But it's important to see that direction of rotation, so you know that we rotated 270 degrees, and 360 goes all the way around. So what's really important when you draw an angle is that it terminates in the correct quadrant. We're not going to be using a what's that called? A protractor to draw accurately an angle of 120 degrees. What's important is that it terminates in the correct quadrant, meaning that it ends in the correct quadrant. So I can't have my 120 degree angle end here in the first quadrant because this spans from 0 to 90 degrees. And then if I go another quarter turn, now this is 180. So I can't go past this bar here on the x-axis because now I've exceeded 180 degrees. So I know that 120 degrees falls between 90 and 180 degrees. So I just need to make sure that when I draw that terminal side, it terminates in the second quadrant. Okay, if I have an angle of negative 120, remember I want to swing clockwise, so I have to swing under. And if I do a quarter turn, I've gone 90 degrees. Right? If I do another quarter turn, I've gone 180 degrees. I mean, technically this would be negative 90 and this would be negative 180 once I'm swinging this way. So I know that negative 120 has to fall between the, has to fall in the third quadrant.